Okie dokie. We are back the very next day after I had a crash in the middle of my stream last night. I have no idea why, but to everybody who didn't see that video, I'm Sam Foote and this is The Art of Ideas. Welcome to my channel. Well, I worked a 9-hour day today and I'm like an hour and a half home and I am totally exhausted. I had a huge load today. I worked dairy at a Rayleigh's grocery chain, and it's pretty rough, brutal day. But I kind of did it to myself. But that is over now. Now it is time to play. All right. Yes, this is work. A lot of really hard work, but to me, this work is fun. Sometimes stacking yogurt is fun, but psh, yeah. All right, we're done working for the corporation. Now we're going to start working for ourselves. And we're going to peel this guy back. This is one of my little tricks. Notice how I have this set up so I can just drop, little paint sticks to this. If that bugs you, you can put clay around it or something. That doesn't bother me. I'm losing far less paint to this cellophane, this plastic wrap, than saran wrap, whatever, than I am to the air drying out and creating kind of an icky soup skin, to the top of my paint. All right, so I'm not going to fuck with you guys too much tonight in terms of monologuing. I do, it's funny. As an artist, I have such a ADD, like let's go chase squirrels kind of brain, that I almost never finish the point of what I am talking about, because as soon as I start talking about something, I start talking about art history. For example, yesterday I brought up Beksinski, and I realized watching my video, case in point, and Turner, William Turner, that I never finished any of my points that were intended by bringing either of those guys up. Okay, so let's start off with an addendum, then we're going to get our brush wet. And I think I'm going to do this with every video because I prefer to stream instead of edit videos for the most part. So, I can't put captions over, my videos after they're already posted. I don't think I can. If somebody knows how to do that, that'd be awesome. Yeah. So I was talking about Turner, and I never made the point about why he is one of my favorite artists. And it was because of his work ethic. And I was talking about the Tate in London and how they had a bunch of his work, but I never actually made the point of talking about how much work he has. So he has close to 600 oil paintings, and as far as the Tate is concerned, and at least in one documentary I saw with their curator, Turner had something to the effect of 40 to 60,000 watercolors, maybe more, and they don't know. Like that was the numbers they gave, and that's a huge gap, 40 to 60. I mean, there's 20,000, but they don't know. That guy he worked every day, and did sometimes several watercolor pieces a day. And if you go onto YouTube and watch anything about Turner, and in fact, to plug a channel, I can't remember the name of the channel actually. And she hasn't been posting very much lately. But there's a channel that just shows artist work. You maybe get like 2-3 seconds with each piece, and then it cycles to the next piece while it's playing classical or some other appropriate music in the background. And I find that channel amazing, and I hope that person gets right back when they have time to doing that again. I find that channel incredibly useful. But for example, and I forget how long the video is, it's like 2.5-3 hours long, but they just cycle through Turner paintings, and it's psycho. I mean, and that barely even scratches the surface of that man's work ethic. And then to bring up Beksinski, to be clear, I implied that he was still alive. Beksinski's been dead, I think, since 2001, just so you know. He's a Polish artist, and he was, again, a point I forgot to make, inspired by Turner, which was, I was talking about how artists inspire other artists, and so begot so-and-so, ad infinitum. But Beksinski was actually confronted by many of his fans, like, "Are you a fan of Turner?" Even though their work doesn't look anything alike, not not in terms of subject matter or anything that they actually painted, but in terms of color scheme and paint application. So, and I've seen both artists work in person. Fortunately, I would say very fortunately, I've seen like 90% of all the artists I've ever looked up to in person. I'm just a big fan of going to museums and galleries, and educating myself. Because until you put your glass balls right fucking in front of one of your great heroes about 3 inches away, it doesn't measure up. And most of our experience as artists is what we see on the web or on a computer screen or in a book. In my case, growing up, I spent a lot of time in bookstores and libraries as a kid. Studying Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and all the Impressionists and everybody, Picasso to everybody. I'm a huge fan of pretty much every art genre that's ever existed. Because every art genre or every art movement that has ever existed for a reason. It filled a vacuum because it was a response to some kind of thing that was going on around them as an influence, generally in society, like the Dadaists and the Cubists, who were pretty much active around the same period of time. Were both a reaction to conservative society, and I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that they were reacting to being repressed, and artists are generally people who do not like being repressed. In fact, most of the world's in. This is fucking hilarious, but something I've noticed is if you've ever looked at the history or the pastimes of many of the world's most despicable dictators, from Hitler to Lenin to shit, I can make all kinds of examples actually. Mussolini himself wasn't an artist, but a huge art fan. He was inspired into fascism by the futurist art movement in Italy at the time, which was a conservative art movement. Aren't a huge amount of those. It's the only one I can actually think of right off the bat, but in either case, I guess they call the liberal arts for a reason. Artists tend to be liberal, but not always. Obviously, I know plenty of artists who aren't. In fact, a good friend of mine is a conservative artist, so it's not unheard of. It's just much rarer. And I think it's whatever. I'm not going to get into why. If I start talking about why, I'll get in trouble. We're going to get into the realm of politics, and I really want to avoid that as much as possible. Now, if I'm stammering and stuttering a little bit, I'm like, be honest, like 2 shots in to a 4-shot collection I bought after work. Usually like to relax a little bit, so I'm a little stuttery, and maybe not the smoothest cat in the house, but this felt like since I relaunched my channel yesterday and that it got kind of hamstrung by the fact that I was mid-sentence when my fucking computer crashed and would not restart. I tried to get it working again. It did eventually, but it took about 30 minutes. And at that point, it was pretty late and I was just like done with it. I have no idea what happened. I think my laptop overheated. Maybe it couldn't handle the stress. We'll see how it does tonight. I have it elevated a little bit more. And I had a lot of devices plugged into it last night, so maybe that was a problem. I'm not really sure. So I'm actually just looking at my Fire Stick right now. Last night I was going through my HDMI through my laptop to see if I could see my work. And I'm having a hard time seeing my own streams for some reason with this setup, and I don't know why. It's a new one on me. Yeah. Try to remember how to get back to my own page on here, because I just kind of effed up. Well, it doesn't matter. Screw it. It really doesn't matter. I'll just play a random YouTube video in the background, keep my TV active. I would normally be playing music for you guys right now, but we're not going to be doing that tonight, I don't think. I need to sort out some technical difficulties. I'm running a new setup, so I'm not... Wow, what'd I do? Oh, shit. You guys might want some light. There we go. It's a little better. Can't believe I forgot to turn those on. Like I said, had a couple shots. In either case, I'm going to have a couple more. It's actually kind of a problem for me, I'll be honest. I rely on the soothing, calming effects of alcohol way too much in my life. Yeah. I guess everybody has their vices. It's a pretty shitty one to have, though. In either case, we are playing, and yeah. So I was kind of alluding to yesterday how I've loosened up my art style quite a bit. I'm starting to pay attention to the smart artists in the world and let my brush actually work for me for a change. I have done so many of these dark pieces, and half the reason they take me so freaking long is because I'll be like painting the entire thing with a liner brush or something, and I know people... You could be as cynical as you want, trust me. Look at some of my Flemish work in person. It's not a brag, it's fucking true. You know, it's funny. I was always under the impression, going back to my influences and how I learned about art, you know, from looking at books, that when you're looking at a picture in a book of a painting, you're basically like seeing that painting from like 10 feet away. Like, and it never really occurred to me. So, like, my first experiences was seeing paintings in actual museums, like LA County Museum of Art, uh, or the Getty, for example, or any other, you know, gallery, for that matter. Is that many of my heroes' work, when I first saw it, I was actually kind of heartbroken. Um, what would be Thomas Hart Benton? That would be one. That would be a perfect example of an artist who I was just soul crushed. Another one would be Thomas Cole. Thomas Cole, when I first saw his work in person, I almost cried. And his paintings are huge. At least, at least a couple examples I've seen. The first time I encountered Thomas Hart Benton, or not, well, both actually, Thomas Hart Benton and Thomas Cole's work was actually in the LA County Museum of Art quite a long time ago. It may have been like close to 20 years ago. And I believe it was around 1999, maybe 2000. But my point is like I had always seen Cole's work in books, and they look like photographs in a book. And and Thomas Cole, if you don't know who he is, he was one of the establishers of uh, the Hudson River School. He was a tonalist and one of the most famous American painters in history. So you should know who he is. Shame you. Anyway, but yeah, when I first saw his work, his paint strokes looked like fucking chicken guts in person. It's totally undetailed. It's a big fucking mess until you stand about 20 feet back. And again, they are huge paintings. Um, but that just it really disappointed me. And I had always been working overtime to make my work look like immaculate. Like, you know, I was isolated. I grew up in a small town. Well, I moved around, but I spent a lot of my high school years in a small town in Montana. Very, very small town. Like so small, it's practically it's probably being declared a ghost town at this point. But Hysham, Montana, and Custer, Montana, too, because I went to 4 high schools. I went to 4 high schools and 4 elementaries and 1 middle school. So yeah, I felt like a fucking military kid growing up. But in either case, the point I was trying to make is that yeah, it was just very disappointing to realize that a lot of my great heroes, and the old saying, "Never meet your heroes," held true in that case, big time. And then later, and I haven't been back to see that painting, but if I did, I would look at it completely differently now. I wouldn't be disappointed in it. That was just first impressions. Now I would see it as freaking genius. I would adore it and love that painting. It's just about the perspective that you come at certain things in life. Your own. It's a saying that I like quite a bit. It's actually one of my favorite sayings. Let's see if I can remember how the saying goes and say it correctly. But something to the effect of disappointment is directly proportional to expectation. That's it, word for word, nailed it. Which is pretty rare. That's why I'm going to start a segment in every video where I make an addendum to the prior video, because it's funny. I quite enjoy reviewing my videos, and the reason I do is partially just to see how I can get better and how I can say more and to find my own mistakes and to get new ideas, and I sit there and I take notes and I plan on the next video, and so that was definitely an addendum to the video I did yesterday that I wanted to make. And I don't know how long my laptop is going to run tonight. We'll see. I don't think there's anything wrong with my laptop. I think I just had too many devices, and in fact, it feels okay right now. It feels like lukewarm. But last night, holy crap, when my stream crashed, the thing was smoking hot. And I truly don't understand why. And yeah, and I'm going to have to figure out how to access my streams. I really don't know. I'm going to have to do some research on that. If anybody knows, let me know. God, what was I using? I was using Prism on my phone, and every time I was streaming live with Prism on my phone, I can go right to my to my YouTube channel on my computer and see the fact that it was actually broadcasting live and that it was great, and I could check my audio. But for whatever reason, my streams are not showing live right now, even though OBS is claiming that I'm streaming live. So we'll see what happens. I'm no technical wizard with technology, trust me. It's not that I don't appreciate it. My brain has only so much hard drive space, and I dedicate most of it to this and stacking yogurt because I work a dairy department. That's my real job. This is my real job. That is the job I'm trying to get out of. Not that I hate it or anything, but I'm getting old and I'm getting sick and tired of working for other people, especially mega corporations where you can't fucking do anything that is reasonable because it conflicts with the bean fucking counters who sit behind a desk all day instead of actually in the trenches where they could actually see where their work is having an effect. That's the problem with bean counters. They just sit in the fucking back room all day trying to make rich people money without actually knowing what the fuck they're actually doing. And then they get a huge bonus for every time they fuck somebody out of an actual paycheck. They get a little pat on the head for fucking people over. That's how bean counters work. If you work for a corporation, corporations are held up. Their foundation is fucking bean counters. So screw them. Not that I'm shitting on Rayleigh's. It's actually a really good company to work for. As corporations go, if you if you're looking for a job on the West Coast and you happen to be in Nevada or California, I highly suggest, if you're begging for a job, go work at a Riley's. As long as you have a good background. Sorry, keep cleaning my throat. I smoke a vape all day and it kind of wrecks my lungs. Yeah, and I should stop that. I'm planning on it. Don't have much of a choice now. The Fed passed a new bill that greatly restricts, and it just happened. The effect of it will be being felt anytime now. So I guess I finally get to chuck another vice, which is nicotine, unless I get addicted to something else. Nicotine related, I mean. I'm not shopping for new drugs to get addicted to, so I don't need any pushers on my stream, like in the comment section, offering me some bath salts or some fucked up thing. You may have noticed I'm not like your typical everyday super polite artist. I am. I'm a real person. I'm not here trying to blow smoke up your bum, you know, with bullshit. I'm just giving you a little bit of art history, a little bit of hands-on art demonstration. I'm not much for tutorializing, but I do it, you know. I mean, I'm showing you what I'm doing. I'm talking about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. So I guess that's tutorializing, but I'm not here to do the 500,000th how to paint the human eye video on YouTube. No offense to those other YouTubers, because I adore you all. I respect you all and I watch your videos, so I'm not shitting on you. I'm just trying to find my own angle, and my personality dictates that I am not going to be doing fucking tutorial videos. I'll show you how I do things, but I don't consider that a tutorial. Just giving you insight into my process and how I think. And my process is hard fought. You know, I've spent the better part of 25 years learning how to paint oil. Longer than that, actually, if you consider when I started, around 9 years old. But I gave it up for a good long time until I got back into it. So I start from my very, very early, how old was I? I think I started getting back into oil painting around 98, and I'm 44 now. So do the math. I suck at math, so have fun with that. But that's how long I've been oil painting. And I'm self-taught. I did not go to school for this shit. I just happen to read books and seek out knowledge. And really like watching videos. So in the last few years, I've been just pounding art videos on YouTube. There's so many great resources. I mean, I'm sure a lot of artists feel pressure to go to an art school to have the actual degree, but if you look at a lot of the artists who actually make it in the world, they're self-made. You know, you don't need a degree to tell you you're an artist. It might be a huge benefit. I'm not shitting on it, because honestly, I didn't go to art school. So, you know, the benefit of the exposure to other artists is probably a really great thing, having other artists to hang out and inspire you, that's a great thing. I have no problem with that. I can't criticize what I've never experienced. I'm only saying that I'm just a person who's curious and seeks out knowledge, so I can pretty much find out, figure things out on my own for the most part. Not that there isn't benefit of people coming at you sideways with knowledge you never would have on your own sought otherwise. And that is the value of school, is having people force you into knowledge that you never would have found otherwise. But that's also the massive compendium of human knowledge that we call YouTube now, as well as all the other streaming services for that matter. There's plenty of them, Vimeo, whatever. Vimeo never really took off like YouTube did, but there's Twitch, which, if I can find out how to stream to both at the same time, that would be wonderful. I'll do that. Or if I, I'm just seeking eyeballs, on my work. Oh yeah, speaking of which, quote of the day. Uh, you can't sell it if they can't see it. That's something that occurred to me. Not like that's a huge fucking, revelation or anything. Arts never retire, they just expire. That's true. That's another quote of mine from today. I write constantly. It's usually like little fucking haikus and shit like this. Little like life observations. It's pretty much all I do, and I've been doing this for a long time. Since I was 15, I've been keeping a constant journal. And actually, I have several. So I have several journals based on my emotions and my mood. I think I've talked about this actually in one of my other streams. But yeah. I keep dark journals, I keep light journals, I keep philosophical journals, I keep painting journal. Uh, yeah, your brain is a leaky sieve, and if you don't capture every thought with that butterfly net as soon as it freaking leaps out of your noggin, then you're probably screwed if you're an artist. It might occur to you sometime later, much later, but you know, I try and document it. I'm also a whore for post-it notes. I used to make art on post-it notes just because I would have so many of them on my walls in so many different colors. I would start rearranging them into pictures, like pixels on a TV screen. No joke. I mean, and that's not unique. There's an actual artist who's famous for doing that now, but I was doing it 10 years before I even heard about that guy. Not to say I came up with it. I probably didn't. It's probably been done for decades. As soon as you think you really came up with something unique, you're probably going to be proven wrong. And if you do come up with something unique as an artist, then you get tagged as clever and you get rich if enough of the upper class see it, which that's tricky. And like I said, I'm probably just going to play on this for like maybe a short amount of time. Now that I got my channel back up, I'm going to keep the ball rolling. I am not taking my foot off the gas. And I'm going to have a schedule for days that I'm almost certainly going to be posting. I can't guarantee I'm going to post that night. Nobody can guarantee that. Maybe I got a flat tire. Maybe I got too drunk. Maybe something happened. Nobody can be 100%, but all the time. But I promise all of you I'm going to make the effort. I need to make the effort for myself as much as anyone, because I can't work for people for the rest of my life. And this is like, I think, the first real corporate job I've ever had, and I can't say I hate it. I mean, I have life insurance, I have health insurance, I have not mental, I need mental insurance. I have dental, vision, blah, 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 all of that. And that's what you get when you get with a really good company. So I'm not complaining. And actually, my job isn't that horrible or anything. It used to be until I bitched, complained, and threatened to quit. And then I finally got some help. Now that I have some help, I have free time to do this kind of thing. That was another thing that I should have added to the addendum part, because I forgot to mention that actually when I was talking about why I had been missing for the last 6 months. It's because I got this job, and I got this job back right in the middle of the freaking holiday season. And dairy's horrible during the holidays. It's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, fucking everything from eggnog to whatever. I mean, but my volume of product that I move during the holidays, especially the ones where people like to bake shit, the thing about the winter is that humans are like squirrels. You get into the middle of the cold snap, and then everybody's body basically tells them that they need a lot of calories, so they all go start pushing a lot of calories. I mean, it's winter, it's the time of plenty, right? So, well, not the time of plenty, it's the time of death, is the way ancient people used to see it. But, it's always portrayed as plenty because of the harvest season. And, like Thanksgiving, for example. Perfect example. And during Thanksgiving, I get destroyed in my job. Like, as far as like, I can't move fast enough. I can't keep up with customers buying things at the rate that I can restock it, it's a nightmare. And since my department only has one person, now two, but only alternately. So I work 4 days a week, and the other gentleman works 3. He's a kid, actually. He's 22. He's a child. But I I work 4 days a week because I've worked really hard in my life to be in a place of comfortability to the point where I don't need a huge amount of money every month. Uh, I live in a very, very expensive place to live. Reno in general is crazy expensive because we are neighbors to California, and California is almost impossible to live in. I mean, I love California, but geez, the rent, the land tax if you own a home, it's just insane. Like I know somebody who has a place down in Ojai, California, which is pretty ritzy. It's where a lot of it's outside of Santa Barbara. It's in between Santa Barbara and LA. And it's actually only like 20 minutes before Santa Barbara. But a lot of celebrities live there in Ojai. And it's pretty rural. You know, it's kind of a small town, you could say. But yeah, made up of mansions and shit. You know, Oprah lives there, for example. Perfect example. And this lady, she has probably half an acre, something like that, which is kind of a lot of land to own, you know, for a house in California. Not counting like if you have a plantation, a orchard or something like that. If you're not doing agricultural, you know, and she lives in a town. So, but she pays over 10,000. And this is shit. This was 10 years ago. I heard about, you know, heard how much she pays in land tax, but just for her little house, she pays over 10 grand a year in land tax. Are you effing kidding me? Dude, seriously. That's like, fuck, what is that? Like somewhere around 800, I mean, random, I'm terrible at math, but it's like, it's close to $800 a month, right? You know, just to pay your fucking tax on a house that you already own that she has paid off. It's ridiculous. So that's why so many people move out of California, especially out of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the most expensive place to live in the United States, by the way. It's not New York or whatever, it's San Francisco. San Francisco is the most expensive place to live in the United States. And by quite a bit, too. It's quite a bit more expensive than New York. I think the last time I looked, and it was several years ago, but San Francisco was running at average rent of okay, so New York was doing $3,200 a month average rent. $3,200 a month in New York as average rent. Average, sure, you know, that's balancing out the penthouses with the poor people, you know, scraping grease out of grease traps. But yeah, but 3,200, that's psycho. San Francisco 3,700. Are you actually kidding me? That's just nuts. So, and as much as I love San Francisco, I've never been to New York. I've always wanted to go to New York, and I will eventually. I like to drive there, actually. It would be fun, just taking a big road trip. I'm quite the fan of road tripping, and I haven't done one in quite some time. I used to do them pretty much as a consequence of what I did for a living at the time, but I used to drive all up and down the West Coast constantly. So I'm very familiar with the West Coast as far as everything from California to Washington. I know it like the back of my hand, and all the way up to almost the Midwest. I know it very well, but the East Coast I am completely unfamiliar. But I would enjoy making myself familiar. All right. I'm not even really talking about what I'm doing. It's funny. I'm then again, you know, like I was saying, I'm not trying to tutorialize. I'm actually just moving around, bouncing around as I always do. And yeah, I'm trying to, you know, eventually I'm going to have to come in here and add some cracks and some really interesting details to all these mountains. I don't have any of that in there yet. I'm just really trying to build the distance. And that's something I'm really well known for, at least in Reno. With other artists, is how I can build a depth in my paintings. And that's just through a lot of study and work. and passion to find it. You know, if you want to accomplish something, you'll find a way of doing it. I totally screwed that up. I was like several shades way too dark for this area. I mean, geez, look at that. It's like throwing a turd in a punch bowl. Oh my god. All right. Point being, it stands out. It's not going to go unnoticed. Yeah, that was a big mistake. I didn't mean to. I didn't realize the depth of the contrast on my brush here. That's much better. There we go. That's pretty good. So I'll obsessively just keep doing this, like back and forth, reworking it over and over and over ad infinitum until I'm a happy guy. And the area I should really be working on tonight, and I think I will do it on my next stream on this painting, is to work on the top. The top is by far the roughest part. It took me forever, and I did this by eye. I know how to figure it out by eye. Like God, what's his name? Scott Robertson. Watch Scott Robertson videos on YouTube. Go follow his channel if you want to know anything about perspective. That is the master. I mean, he is the like authority on that. He worked, and I don't know if he still does, but he worked for Noman, which is a 3D school of design in Los Angeles. It's in Hollywood. I've been there several times, actually. I had a friend who used to go to that art school, and it's basically for training artists on the special effects industry in Hollywood. You know, that's why it's in Hollywood. And it's mostly they do everything: 3D graphics, clay work, sculpture, clay work, yes. You know, for building maquettes, for like if you're working for Disney, something of that nature. It's a pretty wonderful little place. I mean, it's kind of in a ghetto. A lot of people that get stars in their eyes when they think about Los Angeles and Hollywood, but unless you've actually spent a lot of time there, and I've spent a fair amount of time there, you know, most of the place is just a big ghetto. You know, most of Hollywood's just a big ghetto. It looks like a goddamn demilitarized zone, to be honest. You don't really feel safe unless you're on, you know, the very western part of the Sunset Strip, and that's when you're going to see the people driving their Ferraris and showing off their shit, because it runs right under the Hollywood Hills, where all those folks live. Unless you're in that part, which is kind of closer to like, geez, I hope I'm saying this right, Malibu Beach. Then, you know, that's the part that most people dream of. But I always say this is a joke, but it's not a joke. It's true. Is when you're in Hollywood, one thing you notice right away, and I noticed it at Mel's Diner one time. In fact, it was the Mel's Diner that was in American Gothic. Yeah. So the movie American Gothic. So famous scene. The kids are peeling out of the parking lot of the burger joint, Mel's Diner. And the two police officers sitting in the car are about to pursue, and they put that pedal to the metal, and well, the kids tied their freaking rear differential, their rear axle, to a light pole or something. I don't remember. I haven't seen the movie in decades, but you know, rips the whole rear drivetrain of the police car out of the car. It's a really famous scene. But yeah, that parking lot. Yeah, so I'm in there with my brother and one of our best friends, and we are, you know, we're about to go to, where were we? We were about to go to Beverly Hills to go to a gallery that I really wanted to see that was showing some of my favorite dark artists, Giger, Beksinski. Oh my God, I can't forget his name. Oh my gosh. Oh, dude. Wayne Barlow. I think that's his name. Wayne Barlow. Wow, he's amazing. I saw a bunch of his work in person. A bunch of very famous caricature artists, very, very famous visual, fantastic painters, as they generally like to refer to. And I'm part of that movement, actually. I've been on Benet art for a long time, almost 20 years. So I'm part of the surrealist, futurist collective. Not that I participate very often. I'm not much of a participator. I'm more of a solo show. I don't know if that's because I'm narcissistic and an egomaniac, which I am a little bit sometimes, but I'm also very humble. I'm very you cannot get I'm not narcissistic. I'm just confident. I don't need to compare myself to other people. It's not because I'm better. I like what I do. So why do I have to compare what I do to what anybody else does? Because what I do isn't really, you know, I get compared to other artists a lot, but that everybody does. I mean, shit, it doesn't matter how unique your art is, you're probably going to get compared to somebody because that's a frame of reference for anybody who's trying to see your work in the first place. They need a frame of reference. And that's just the way humans work, you know? It's like, oh, your work looks like Pollock or Gauguin or whoever I can name probably like fuck. If I really put myself to the Pepsi challenge and wanted to name ours, I could fuck some shit up. I could seriously name a lot of artists. I'm a huge fan of art history. If you want to know where you're going or where you're going to end up, look at the past. I'm a fan of history in general, like not even just our history, just in general. World War II history, American history, world history, whatever. I've always been a fan of history. It's like one of the few classes I actually did well in when I was in school was history. I actually did pretty good in that one. I've always had a natural interest in it. And I've always been, well, at least since I was 15, I've been, not 15, maybe 16, 17. I was converted. I really became a voracious reader at that time in my life. And I still am. I just don't read a lot of books so much anymore. Here and there, I always have a book going. I mean, I have a stack of history books right next to my bed. There's like 4 of them right there. I'm reading Moby Dick, which I adore. It truly is. It's not oversold. It really is, in my opinion, one of the best written novels ever in history. If you haven't been forced to read it yet, I'm reading it for fun. But I'll tell you, to be honest, it's taken me a really long time to get through the sucker. And usually I tear through books. If I like a book, I'll destroy the thing. I'll murder that book. I used to read a book every other day, and I did that for years. But now it's like maybe a couple dozen a year. Just because, I mean, you become an adult and, geez, bills, life, work, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm using you probably won't see this. The camera's too zoomed out, but I'm really, and I'll say this a lot, but I am learning the value of using my brushes. I've always been oh geez, like I've always worked literally, like in the sense that my brush was a way of rendering perfection. So sables, blending, no brush strokes, every blade of grass hand drawn. Not anymore. Not lately. Not in the last. Well, not in the last year because I started giving it up actually slowly several years ago. But it's only reaching a crescendo with my work now, and particularly with this piece. It's one of the things I really love about this piece. So, technique-wise, I'll tell you one of my little tricks is that I'm using totally screwed up brushes, completely effed up brushes. I mean, this thing's totally wrecked. And I'm learning to get my paint super thin. So I'm using oil paint at the consistency of something that would be like thick watercolor. Okay, so like in sometimes really thin watercolor. And about the only real disadvantage of working this way is the fact that I get a lot of sink-in issues because I am using thinner. And now a lot of other artists might confront me and wonder if I'm concerned about lack of adhesion because I'm weakening the molecular bonds of the paint. It's and a perfect example of that is like, let's say you're working in acrylic and you use water as your medium, right? And you're trying to thin out your acrylic with water. Well, unless you're working on an absorbent surface, that's not a really good idea, because by doing that, you're basically moving the molecules of the acrylics farther and farther apart from each other, and they don't stick to each other as well. And I've actually had this problem a lot with acrylics, like where I would be working on, say, a smooth piece of masonite, which I have all kinds of masonite around here. Let's say I have a smooth piece of masonite, and well, it's an oil painting, but and I've done a lot of paintings, but I do a lot of small paintings. That's another whole video to get into. A lot of videos to get into is how I sell so many paintings. A lot of artists hate me because I sell a lot of paintings, or I have. But I have a very sound strategy. I'll tell you really quick. Do a few really big, insanely detailed paintings, and then paint a whole bunch of small ones that people can afford. Good strategy. And coffee shops, showing coffee shops. I know everybody's trying to chase the gallery situation, but think about the logic of trying to show in an art gallery. Have you ever been in an art gallery, like even a really high-end art gallery, like an art gallery, not a museum, mind you, an art gallery? So what happens when you go into art gallery? Well, the first thing I notice is that there's nobody in the fucking place. Art galleries don't get a lot of traffic. They get shit traffic, and if you're trying to sell, again, if they can't see it, they can't fucking buy it. And that's the problem with art galleries. Art galleries I love them. I adore art galleries. I'm not trying to shit on art galleries, because I'm actually quite a big fan of art galleries, but they just mechanically, they have a problem. And unless you're on State Street in Santa Barbara, your art gallery is probably gonna struggle. Because I've shown in 2 fucking art galleries when both of them went down during the show, like that I was doing. I was one was called the West of East Gallery in downtown Reno. Another one was geez, I don't remember the name of the gallery, but it was I see a face in here. Like, I see an awesome painting in this. So I just, whatever. But yeah, I mean, and then I did a show in Rockport, Maine. I live on the West Coast. I did not go to the show. I only sent them 3 paintings. I don't remember how many paintings I sent them. I think it was 3. One sold, and I was one of 62 artists who showed in that gallery during his lifetime, and I'm one of only 2 who sold anything. So hey, again, sucking my own D, if you know what I mean. But it's not an ego thing. It's just because I have sound strategies on how I approach things. You have to think about the logic of the person who's observing whatever you're doing. You have to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, how many people really have a lot of money to throw away on something as well, it's a luxury. It's an art. Art is a luxury. Um, so, geez, I totally got off base. I probably lost my entire point of where this whole conversation started. We'll get back to it in tomorrow's video, if I do one tomorrow. So, I mean, today is my Monday. Suck, and it is Monday. So that even just made it worse. But and my job today is fine. It wasn't a bad day or anything. It was just really rough. I'm quite physically exhausted. It's part of the reason I'm so 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 that, and like I said, I had a cocktail or 2 to loosen up, which is something I'm trying to give up, because that's actually a big problem with me. Something I'm pretty self-conscious of, the fact that I drink way too much, and I have for about the last 15 years. I gave it up for about 9 months recently, and it was wonderful. I slept so much better. Everything was so much better. But during this holiday season, I fell right back into it, because I got all super stressed out. And now I'm having a really hard time stopping. So it's kind of a problem. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm not going to hide anything from any of you guys. I mean, and you know what? I mean, I could say I regret it or whatever, but in actuality, I mean, uh, I create some. I mean, you sometimes, under the influence of, depending wherever you're on, can create some pretty interesting things. Let's just put it that way, because I've been accused of being a drug addict by many of you of my work. and I'm not. Like, it's the funny part. Have I tried just about everything under the sun at least once? Yeah, sure. Yeah, you name it. I've probably done it. It's stuck in my body somewhere, and it may have almost killed me. I've got plenty of stories about shit like that. I've been on the verge of death more times than I like to count because I was trying something stupid. But I've always been the person to try something once and then never do it again. I'm really good like that. But unfortunately, with the drinking, yeah, not so much. And I didn't even start drinking until I was 30, literally. I mean, yeah, sure, I had a drink here and there on occasion, but I come from a long line of alcoholics, and it's not an excuse, it's just fucking fact. And I knew better until, and there's a really, really long story about how this happened. It's an interesting story, actually. But for another time, I don't know how many of my stories I can tell, because there's other people involved in them, and I don't want to offend anybody or get in big trouble by talking about things that have happened to me in the past or things that I've done that probably shouldn't be talked about in public. All right, it's going pretty well so far. I haven't really been talking about my strategy about what I'm doing, but like my last video, I basically I did that. I'm just trying to build distance and a little bit of detail. I add a little bit of detail to certain things here and there. And day by day, as this painting dries, it changes on me. I get more and more sink in, or colors will flatten out, or whatever. So oil paint is a challenging process, but I highly endorse it. I work in most mediums, and oil's by far my favorite. I quite have fun with acrylic and watercolor. I love watercolor. I really, really, really do. Which is funny because I only really forced myself to get into watercolor about several years ago. I mean, like any kid, I've always messed with watercolor throughout my entire career, but I never took watercolor seriously. Not because I didn't think that it wasn't a serious medium. No, it was because it was too fucking difficult. Watercolor can be a really challenging medium to work in. It's challenging as oil easily. You really have to know what you're doing, but you have to find your own way. And I don't think that either medium is really hard. I think what's difficult is trying to get around yourself, get around your problems with the medium, not the medium itself. The medium is sound. The problem is you and how you work and how you don't understand how to achieve what you're trying to achieve with that medium, and it can be really, 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 really frustrating. But then again, YouTube, that's one thing. That in practice and just going out and doing field painting, because watercolor has traditionally always been seen as a well, not in the modern sense, but it used to be seen generally in times past, especially during the Renaissance era and whatnot. Watercolor was seen as a study medium. Like, you would go out to take a study because it was quick, and they didn't have cameras at the time. So, you're basically jotting down notes of, say, a mountain range or an ocean or whatever, and you're trying to get a color scheme going and blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to take that back to your studio and you're going to paint it in oil. And that's how Turner, Henry William Mallard Turner, was generally seen as his watercolors were seen. He was actually, I always saw him as an oil painter, but in actuality, he did like almost 600 oil paintings as far as anybody knows, and he did tens and tens of thousands of watercolor pieces. So in actuality, it was actually a watercolorist, not. I mean, if you want to measure or judge somebody, but he was just an artist, a great artist, a truly driven man. He, you know, he wasn't a particularly attractive guy. There's actually a movie about Turner out there. It's called Mr. Turner, I believe is the name of it. It's slow. I mean, if you're into historical biopics and into art in general, which I definitely am. I love movies like Pollock and Surviving Picasso and Magdalene. There's like, I think there's like 3 or 5 movies about Magdalene, but I actually quite like the one with, oh geez, how am I blanking the, it's one of the more modern ones. Andy Garcia. Andy Garcia plays Magdalene. And that's an excellent movie. The only thing I would say about that movie I really hate is I hate historical epics or biopics that have modern music in them. It just sucks you out of the whole fucking era. It's like, that's the only thing wrong with that movie. The movie is phenomenal until they start playing modern, like, love songs to it. And you're like, wait, this is supposed to be like 1930 fucking France. Why in the hell am I hearing, like, you know, Rod Stewart or somebody in the background? It's just silly. It's a real pet peeve. Okay, so to get back to where I'm going with this, I think on the next session, what I'm gonna do, maybe tomorrow actually, I'm gonna have to put this guy away for a couple weeks to let dry, because I'm at this point now where I have enough of the actual raw detail that I've been doing with the thinner in, and I think I actually want to take a session and oil this out. I'm going to rub linseed oil all over the sucker, and I'm going to do a wet and wet session. And there's no wet and wet in any of this. This is all dry brush. And so I've only been working with thinner in my brush. I have not oiled this out. I did not do a wet and wet session. This is all just a lot of hard work. Dry brush. But I'm trying to focus my light over here, but this whole top is a little too samey. So I'm going to slowly start darkening and creating a vignette around this, which it exists. It's just not real obvious. I always do that. It's something, and I'll repeat this 500 times, probably in every video, but something Monet said is always hold your corners. You know, you want to vignette your painting if you can, if it makes sense to. And I generally do. Most of the time, vignette my paintings a little bit if I can find a reason to, because it focuses your eye towards the center of your subject. And so, like, this is too samey, and so I'm gonna slowly start darkening and pulling this this light out, because I have about as much white. It's very flat. It's not thick here, but I can't get this too much brighter, but it doesn't look bright enough. So in order to make this look brighter, I have to make everything else around it darker, if that makes any sense. And like, so from right here, like this value and this value are pretty close. Maybe this value is even lighter than this value, and this value should really be darker than this value. It's just shit you notice when you look. But you have to stand back and, you know, spend 12 hours staring at your own work, which I do obsessively. It's not formula, not like, you know, you literally have to spend 12 hours. But I always, this is my studio, it's my bedroom, and I have my bed facing my easel's kitty corner to it. Actually, I have my TV at the foot of my bed on a ceiling mount, so I can flip my TV around. You guys will see that a lot, because I'm going to use my TV, and I have in past videos. If you want to see it, you can look at my past videos. But so I can demo to you guys, so I can show you stuff. If I want to bring up Turner and give an example of his work, I can just bring it up really quick. And so I wake up to my paintings, so I see this with fresh eyes every single morning. And I've got like 30, 40 paintings on that side. I've got probably a dozen or so paintings over there, probably a dozen paintings down here. You know, they're all unfinished, and I don't know how many of those are actually going to get finished, but any painting that I care about generally gets finished eventually. It might take a long ass time, but they do get finished. So I'm pretty good about finishing paintings, or we're finishing. So let me take one step back really quick. Here's my agua. I'm going to take my one of my last shots. I don't want to do too many more on camera, because I won't be able to stand straight, much less speak straight. I'm already slurring my speech. Yeah, so the UFO is actually pretty hammered in here pretty well. Some of the things that make it look a little awkward is some of my initial drawing. You can see I have a China marker. So I've got China markers here, which, yeah. Yep, great way to make notes on your painting. And the other nice thing about China markers, it's oil-based, so you can go right back in here with your thinner and blend it in like it's oil paint. Pretty sweet. Make it disappear, whatever. It's like it never happened. One that takes a little bit more effort to get up because it's more kind of waxy is Prismacolor Premieres. Also an excellent way of going in, and I do it all the time. Like, I'll come in here and I'll start drawing. I'll maybe start indicating the fact that I'm going to put some trees in here, which I'm going to. So yeah, maybe we'll, start indicating the fact that I'm going to have some trees in here on these hills. There we go. Indicated. Now, if I come in here on the premieres, they do still actually dissolve with the OMS, the odorless mineral spirits, but it takes a lot more work and pressure. But in either case, I'm going to leave that for now. I'll come back later and actually do that in paint. Yeah, so my next session, I'm probably going to drop my easel, readjust my camera, and focus more in this area on the next one. Or I'll just flip this fucker over and do it reverse, which I do sometimes, which is a really good thing to do. I keep a mirror over here so I can look over my shoulder in the mirror, get a mirror image of it. That'll really show you all your problems. Another good way is just flipping it. If you don't have a mirror, flip the painting upside down. You'll see every mistake you made. You'll see every perspective screw up you made instantly, and it'll really bother you. So, but I actively avoid trying to do proper perspective. I'm a rule breaker. I follow the rules in order to make it look believable, and I talk about this a lot, believability. You're looking at something that looks like it's a world that could exist in its own little universe. That universe might be in Dr. Seuss's head, or in my case, my head, but it looks believable. Like, you buy it. And I do abstract work too. And that work doesn't necessarily require believability as much. I pretty much just try and work in every genre of art that I care about. But generally, I have a pretty a style that's been adapted from my influences of everybody from Dali to Dr. Seuss to Leonardo da Vinci to Beksinski to Turner to fucking about 20 million other artists. And as a obsessive fan of art, I actively study, art history, to find more of them. In fact, I have a pretty interesting art history book that I don't know where it is. It's up in my attic, along with a huge. Because when we initially moved into this house, I'm proud to say most of my possessions were books. It was a total pain in the ass. Most of them are up in the attic. I would need a small library to store them. But I have a lot of art books. But one of the art history books is basically, I don't know how to describe it. It's like on each page, there's an artist. And on that page, so let's say it's Leonardo da Vinci. I'll show a picture of Leonardo da Vinci, his portrait, there is one. And then a piece, an example of something he had done, like the Mona Lisa, for example. And then under that, it will give the history of everybody who taught Da Vinci, or all of his influences. It's only a couple paragraphs. And then it'll be everybody who studied under Da Vinci that he trained personally. And then on the next page, it'll be that student of Da Vinci, or if they're noteworthy, if they're worth being in the book. And then the same thing, like Da Vinci was his teacher, but then he was really good, and then he inspired so-and-so, and then she went off and did this and that, It's an interesting book. It's really interesting. It's a good thing to have in the collection. I've read through it like 3 or 4 times. Not that I can commit to memory much of it, but like little bits of it that really impact you stick, And that's the important part, is just really subjecting yourself to information constantly. you might have a goldfish memory like me, but you know the things that, like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean by that. I'm fucking terrible at math. Terrible, horrible, almost as bad as Dolly. Dolly was famously horrible at math, and I didn't even know this until I was watching a documentary. It was made in 1984 about Dolly. It was made the same year he died. And he was still alive during the documentary. And in fact, at the end of the documentary, he was still alive. You know, in the documentary, they never made mention of the fact that he died, but he died like literally like when they published the thing, because he died the same year the thing came out. But Dolly, I didn't know this. There's a lot of things about Dolly that are interesting. But first off, most people don't know this, but like half of his paintings weren't even painted by him. Like for the most part, like he came along and he followed kind of a tradition that was started during the Renaissance. I mean, Rembrandt used to do this shit all the time. I think it was Rembrandt. I mean, but to make an example, I could be wrong about this, but I think it was Rembrandt. It was one of the artists who did this a lot. It was pretty standard practice. But you know, he had students, right? He had students he was training all the time. And that was, you know, just like today, you know, artists need income. So, you know, you have students, they're paying you, you know, that's a source of income, and that's been tradition, you know. And then that time, you know, far more so than now, there was still this whole system of apprenticeship. You know, if you became apprentice to somebody, it wasn't like you went to college necessarily. Most of the time, it was more that you got, if you were part of a trade, you know, you got an apprenticeship with somebody, and they trained you in the field that you would be spending the rest of your life on, if you're a blacksmith or whatever. And that was very, very much the case, and still is in a lot of ways, with art, um, up until very recently, actually. Um, but Dolly had a guy who was a much better painter than he was technically, much better. And you can see it in his work. It's kind of funny. Like, I have all these Dolly books, huge Dolly books. I could show you one of my Dolly books, except for it's so heavy I can't even carry it over here right now. But he actually employed a very famous, well, not very famous, otherwise he would be known, but he was a very talented Spanish painter to basically do all the lay-in for most of his technical work. And here's the funny thing, talking about math, he also paid all Dolly's bills because Dolly couldn't add. That's how bad Dolly was with math. He took him everywhere he went. And everywhere Dolly went, especially when he met fame, he had an entourage. He always had people with him. And his wife, uh, Jesus, what was her name? Gita, I think. She's a Russian lady. Oh my God, how did I forget her name? I haven't. Gala. Maybe it was Gala. Yeah, I think it was Gala. Was his wife. She's very famous. And actually, his wife was quite a bit older than him. I think his wife was like 10 years older than he was. But yeah, so this artist who did a lot of, and I need to look up his name. I'll do an addendum. I can't get to any of my art documentaries because they're all on a hard drive that it's hard to explain. But Dolly couldn't, numbers to him, he was dyslexic. He couldn't deal with math at all. He couldn't pay his bills. He couldn't pay his restaurant bill. That's how bad he was. He couldn't even do basic math. Great painter, but terrible mathematician. But to make that as a point, I'm the same way. I'm terrible with math, but I have a head for statistics. And I think it's because of the association of statistics. They make a point, and I'm a person who likes to make points. So I'm good with statistics. Like, if I hear a statistic that I care about that proves my point, I never forget it. I use it as a razor in debates with friends if I'm having a conversation constantly. Because I can whip out statistics like nobody's business, but I can't. I can barely do basic math. I'm terrible at it. And I can't spell for shit either, but yet I have a fairly large vocabulary. I would say probably okay. So on average, the normal human being has a working vocabulary of around 700 words, which is pretty funny because the smartest dogs can have a working vocabulary of English of up to 500 words. So humans aren't that aren't that fucking smart. But yeah, we're not nearly as smart as we think we are. But your average Oxford, I believe it's Oxford, graduate has a working vocabulary of somewhere around 2,000 words, supposedly, which, significant, uh, variation between, say, the common person and an Oxford graduate. But that is the school of English, So, makes sense. My working vocabulary is probably somewhere around 1,500 words, I would guess, just because I read, but I can't punctuate to save my life. I still don't know how to use to right in a sentence. I know how to use almost everything else right. There's and where's and all that stuff. I got that down. That's easy. But twos, yeah, I have a hard time with twos. And even when I look up the rules of twos, the rules of twos say, yeah, it could be a little tricky. It's just like, fucking, you gotta be kidding me. But to is in, are we going to the store? Like, is the word to being used as a verb, or is it being used as whatever? I don't know. Or as an adjective or something. I don't know. I'm not so good with that. Nope, not good with it at all. But I am decent with art in general, be it painting, sculpting, whatever. I'm fairly okay at it, I think. I'd like to think so anyway. Otherwise my universe would collapse and I'd jump off a cliff. But here we are, making beautiful, horrific art together. And this UFO needs a lot more refinement. I start talking about that. It's funny, I need to finish my points. So a lot of the mistakes in this is actually just erasable. That's China marker. I just take some thinner over that. It would make this look a lot more symmetrical. But I'll make this a little bit more symmetrical. It's actually kind of weird for me to put a symmetrical object in one of my pieces. The only reason this thing even escaped the way it is because it's an oval. I let it live. But it's weird for me, even just having an oval, because I've put a UFO in several or a few paintings of mine, and I usually warp it. Like it's a saucer is being twisted. It's usually my solution because it's my clever way of getting around the problem of trying to prove to you that I know what I'm doing. I stylize it. It's like. It's something I've always thought about, like Pollock's work. A lot of artists don't like Pollock. It's funny. I adore Pollock. Go watch the movie Pollock. Ed Harris wrote, directed, and starred in it. I think he did I think he did because there's a dedication at the end of the film, and he dedicates the movie to his parents. I think his parents were like huge Pollock fans, and I think that's why he did it. But they probably asked him to, or he did it as a favor to him or something. But it's just like, until I saw that movie, I didn't really know a huge amount about Pollock and his work, and I just kind of saw his work as spaghetti guts, and was a little offended by the fact that he became famous for it, until I really realized, you know, he was a clever guy. He was a really smart guy, and he was actually a really well-trained painter. He used to study under Thomas Hart Benton, for Christ's sake. I mean, Thomas Hart Benton, even though I was just eviscerating his work after seeing it well, I was talking about Cole specifically, but same with Benton. Benton's work, when I saw it, I was like so heartbroken. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy didn't even know how to fucking paint. But now, now I realize I was just looking at it with the wrong eyes. I was looking at it with preconceived expectations. And now that I understand Benton, and I've watched a lot of documentaries about Benton and everything that he stood for, fuck. Well, I was a fan of his in the first place. That's why I mentioned it in the first place. I was a fan of his work. I was just disappointed in his technique when I first saw it, but now in retrospect, it's totally the opposite. Now I see his technique as genius, and that's why I see Pollock. Pollock was hyper clever. hyper clever, you know, and it offends a lot of artists that he was so fucking clever that, you know. But then now, and I think this came out like 2-3 years ago. Funny thing about a lot of the modernists of the time, the contemporary artists of the time, you know, they famously sold really well. Well, part of that is because the CIA, no bullshit, you can go look this shit up. The CIA totally talks about this. Actually, was buying their work. Like most of it. It's fucking hilarious. The government was buying their work because it was a propaganda war with Russia during the Cold War. Yep. Yeah. A lot of people like oh geez. Like they were buying Picasso's, they were trying to show that Western civilization, the Western world, the freedom of expression was superior to communism. So, you know, a lot of that work was poofed up because of the fucking government. It's hilarious. But it's not that I don't think that it doesn't deserve it. You know, now a Pollock is worth like a goddamn fortune. Hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. Which is crazy. That art could be worth that much, but to me it kind of makes sense in a way. You know, I think that the prices have gotten a little too ridiculous. And I think the reason that prices on cars and art in general have gotten so stupid is because there's way too many rich people all having a pissing contest with each other. That's a small part of it. There's a lot more to it than that. What was the other point about that? I don't know. If it occurs to me, there was another major point I wanted to make about that. Actually, that was even more profound. And to the point, that was kind of like the side point. In making the side point, I lost my main point, which is kind of stupid. Doing some special effects for you guys. I'm adding this super awesome fog to the foreground. I'm taking a stare. No, I mean, like, it's not like I can't find things to do. I can find a lot to do. It's just that most of this painting is wet. Yeah, it's my 4th day, I think, solid working on this guy in a row. And, like, this whole area right now is becoming dangerous to work in. Like, I put this black in here the other day, and, well, you can't. You probably, I did that light because I don't want to dig into it. But yeah, there's black in my finger. That was from like 4 days ago. It's getting there though. It's starting to dry. It's going to take a little longer. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to have to let this guy sit for a couple weeks, and then I'm going to probably oil it out. Hopefully they'll bring my darks out a little bit. And also, when you're working wet on wet, one of the nice things is, and I don't want to lose all my detail. I like all the little micro detail I'm getting from all the little bristles on my brush in this piece. But one of the nice things about working wet is you can get immaculate blending. It's almost a joke. That's one of the things that is really freaking cool about oil painting in general is that. And I think I initially got into oil painting for that reason, but because I came from a airbrushing background. I liked the smooth look at the time. And then I realized that the ultimate medium really was oil. As part of the reason I gave up airbrushing, that and the fact that I had arthritis, even at a very young age. I got up airbrushing in my very early 20s, and I haven't really looked back. I might find, I still have all my airbrush equipment, very invested in very high quality Iwata airbrushes. I've got a few of them. Microns and C's and E's and whatever. I've got a pretty good collection of airbrushes, and I'm even thinking about going back and buying some Sotars and stuff. Badger airbrush I always really wanted, and But I can find a use for them, probably with my airbrush work or my watercolor work, which is kind of turning, my watercolor work is actually kind of turning into mixed media work. I'm really having a lot of fun working with watercolor and then adding colored pencil using the colored pencil on the watercolor surface to get detail, and then using um, Q-tips with alcohol to blend them. Yeah. How long have we been going? Hour 20? Yeah, I think I'm going to cut this here. And yeah, so good trick. I've got these. I have a roll of plastic wrap here with a cutter on it, which is nice. Always look for one with a cutter. It makes your life about 100 times easier. And oil paint, even though it takes a long time to dry, it will skin over if you leave it out for a couple days. So what I tend to do is, and it's nice because this is glass, I have a piece of acetate plastic over it, just so it's easier to change it out. And then I've got so this is 3 layers. I've got a piece of masonite painted gray, which I should have cut down. I didn't even think about it before I painted it. I did this yesterday. I had some paper behind it before to give it a kind of a backdrop. It looked like crap. So I painted a board. I gessoed it gray. Just mixed some black acrylic with my white gesso. And here's a quick solution. Took me like 10 minutes. And then, yeah, I put this acetate over it because it's a lot easier. I'm lazy. I'm lazy and I'm not lazy. But it's just being smart, It's like Steve Jobs always said, you want to hire lazy people because they always find the easiest way of doing things. But yeah, now I've got this plastic wrap and I've got my binder clips on here, my paper clips, and then they just hold this on here, and then I can just close this out. And this will greatly increase the length of time that I can use this paint by probably like 3-4 times. And then I can seal it around it, and bam, it's fresh for tomorrow. But yeah, I think I'm going to end the stream. I did the stream tonight because I felt kind of bad about how last night went. It was the first time I had filmed with intention or streamed. It's inaccurate. I've actually done other videos. They're just sitting on my hard drive ready to be edited. So they're not on the web, and they may never end up on the web. I don't know. I'm not, even though I have the intent of doing edited work, and I probably will, and I have the software for it. I'm going to use DaVinci Resolve. It's a wonderful piece of software. I've been messing around with it. It's super easy to use. It's used in the movie industry all the time on motion pictures constantly. You see the work of Resolve in movies constantly. It's professional editing software, and it happens to be free. At least the consumer version of it is free. You can pay, I forget how much it is for the professional version, but the free version has almost everything completely intact. So if you need some editing software, go grab that one and start watching some videos. It's fun to use, actually. I like Resolve. I just I'd rather perform and just do art and talk and follow the mood. Like when I feel the mood to be here, I'm gonna be here. And editing is so sterile and anti-creative sometimes. I mean, for me, as a spontaneous thing. But yeah, I'm sure I'll watch this video later and find 5,000 things that I said that were wrong that I need to correct or add to and whatnot, and that's the next video. So we'll be doing that possibly tomorrow. I mean, I normally would never have even thought of doing a video on a load day. It was just because I get loads every other day for my department, but because those are rough days. Backstock days, which is tomorrow, is fairly cake. It's fairly just hanging out and straightening out my mess. But load days are serious days where I have, well, today I had 2 full pallets of milk was probably 3-4 tons. And, that's how I start my morning, lifting a few tons of product. And then eggs, I had a pallet of eggs, and then I had 1.5 pallets of yogurt. Ouch. Fuck that shit. Yeah, and I got through 3/4 of it today. I move fast. I work hard. I do not F around. I never have with anything I do. I've always been very professional and on the spot. I don't miss a day. In fact, I've only been late to an art showing once, and that was because I was in jail. Long story. But it happened the day after, so I wasn't late for my own reception. I was just late hanging the show. The reception went off without a hitch, and it was wonderful. Went really well. Sold a bunch of, I think I sold 6 pieces at a time, half of which were about this size. So I made a lot of money on that show when I could finally collect for it, because the person who ran the gallery themselves was a total deadbeat. They handed me 2 checks that bounced, and that was 6 months after I sold the pieces. It was terrible. Working with, be careful with who you work. You don't know somebody until you work with them, and yeah, unfortunately, usually that could be a disappointment. But I got paid. It was a great show, though. I'm really happy it went off, and I can tell you the story. It's funny. I think it's hilarious. So, okay. Cool. We will continue this. I also want to finish this because it's getting near midnight here. Well, it's 11. On the money, actually. Holy shit. But I have to be up super early. Like, super early. Crazy early. So, yeah, we are ending this one. Thank you all for, if you made it to this point. Jeez, I don't know why you did. I'm not that pretty. Sorry. In either case, I'll see you all real soon. Probably tomorrow, maybe the next day. Now that I've jumped back on the horse, we are not getting bucked off again. We're going to be consistent. We're going to be uploading constantly. So as I stated yesterday, I'm probably going to do a lot of random videos for a while. And then I'll build a schedule. I just need to figure out how I'm going to build that schedule. And I'm not going to be able to stick to this schedule 100% all the time, because unforeseen things happen to me constantly. Like today, for example, there's a kid who works 3 days in my department. He's a very young guy, and he does a great job. He's a great guy. But, he's young. He wants to go do shit. He's young. I don't know what he wants to do, but he wants... I'm going to have to work my next weekend, basically, is my point. So, yeah. I like keeping my work weeks to 4 days. They're 4 really hard days, and 3 days off feels like a mini vacation every single time. 2 days off is just not nearly enough. And I've got to that point. Like I said, I've worked really hard to get to this point. My brother, mother, and I bought this house about 10 years ago, and right when the housing bubble popped, and we scored. I mean, we ended up with a nearly $400,000 house for like less than half that. And after renegotiating, through interest rates and things of that nature, my fucking mortgage is really low. So like it's $1,000. I'll tell you straight up, $1,000. And between like everybody who lives here, it's a 4-bedroom house, paying rent. My bills are pretty low. I pay half the mortgage. I pay $500 on that, and then I have like 5 websites. I pay for a few of those. So my bills run me several $100s a month. So as long as I can meet my bills, I'm happy. As long as I can meet my bills, still buy tires, put gas in my tank, and buy oil paint. And I do much better than that. I do okay. Working 4 days a week, I'm still doing okay. So, but we could all be doing so much better. And I really want to be out of working for other people. This is my first and last corporate job, I guarantee you. And, every job is hopefully the last job. Well, anyway, like, sub, follow me if you want, or not. But the shit show will be back on again soon. Possibly tomorrow, possibly the next day. but it'll probably be within the next 2 days. And I was happy to be here. It was a lot of fun. So, night all. Oh, my catchphrase. Make a beautiful day. That's my catchphrase. There's a couple of YouTubers who use that now, but I've been saying that for years. Make a beautiful day, because they don't happen by accident. You have to make it happen.